Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome councillors and staff to this meeting of Glamorgan Spring Bay Council held on the 18th of April 2023. I declare the meeting open at 2:01. Glamorgan Spring Bay Council acknowledges the traditional owners of our region and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. All councillors are in attendance. In attendance, we have Mr. Peter Porch, the Director of Works and Infrastructure, Mr. Peter Porch, the Director of Planning and Development, Mr. Alex Woodward, a planner, Mr. James Bonner, the General Manager, Mr. Greg Ingham, and our Executive Officer, Mrs. Jasmine Kerr. General Manager, are there any late reports, please?
Madam Mayor, no, there's no late reports.
Thank you. Agenda item 1.6 is the declaration of interest or conflict. I now request elected members to indicate whether they have one, any interest personally or via a close associate as defined in section 49 of the Local Government Act 1993, or any conflict as described in Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors in any item included in the agenda. Councillor Edwards?
Yes, I note I have an interest in agenda item 4.2, but it is my belief that any perceived conflict of interest is not of such materiality that will affect my decision making when acting as a planning authority.
Thank you. Councillor Woods?
Thank you, Mayor. I know I have an interest in the agenda item 4.2 on page 17, but it is my belief that any perceived conflict of interest is not as of such materiality that it will affect my decision making when acting as a planning authority. Thank you.
Thank you. And as the Mayor, I also note that I have an interest in agenda item 4.2, but it is also my belief that any perceived conflict of interest is not of such materiality that it will affect my decision making when acting as a planning authority. Thank you. Agenda item 2.1 is the ordinary meeting of council. There is a recommendation on page 6. Councillor Woods, thank you.
Thank you. I'll note the council notes the information.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
We'll go over here back to 2.1, that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on 28th of March 2023 at 2 p.m. be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McQueenie, thank you. Anything on the minutes? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 2.2 is the date and purpose of workshops held.
I'll go again.
Thank you, Councillor Woods.
Thank you. I recommend that council notes the information.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Young. Thank you. Any comments on the notes of the workshop? I'll put the motion. All those in, sorry, yes.
Just a comment. The audit panel presentation by Heather Salesby and Rick DeSanti was very, very impressive, I thought. It was informative and gave us a greater understanding of what the audit panel do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Woods. I certainly endorse those words. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Public question time. General Manager, do we have any questions on notice?
No questions on notice, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 3.2, I welcome members of the gallery. Mr. Brian Green has indicated that he would like to ask a question.
In relation to
That's fine.
well, thank you, Mayor.
Our meetings are live streamed, Mr. Green, so we do ask you to use a microphone if you would, please.
Working. Hit it with a hammer.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I'm not sure that everybody can hear me, but
That's okay.
first of all, Mayor, thank you so much for the opportunity to ask a question today. I know I'm have come at short notice, but I just thought it was important from the Friends of the Buckland Church that I do attend today's meeting with a view to just clarifying one point. In saying that, I wanted to thank you and the council for the work that you've done in providing this agenda item today in response to our request for a change of use. I just want to remind councillors that the change of use was in the first place not our decision. It was the decision of the diocese when they made a decision to actually sell the building and beyond that to deconsecrate it. That's really what forced the change of use, because as a result of that, and for us to raise the necessary funds to maintain the building, we seek your indulgence with respect to that planning matter. So really what it boils down to is the number of people that can attend the building. The church has existed for 175 years. It has a capacity of around 100 people. I note in the agenda item, we're talking about less than that. I think it'd be unreasonable under the circumstances if 100 people was not the maximum number of people that we're talking about here. If it's been a problem in the past, nobody's really alerted us to it, and so it shouldn't be a problem in the future. Admittedly, we'll be having functions outside, which potentially could bring more people to the venue. So therefore, I think it is reasonable to request that there is some sort of plan in place for parking and etc. So my question is whether or not the number of people is set at 80, or can we extend that out beyond that?
Mr. Green, there's no debating in this section of council. What I will say to you is that I don't believe the number of 80 was restricting the number in that could attend the venue. It was rather in relation to the parking. The matter will be dealt with at agenda item 4.2, and you're more than welcome to stay in the chamber and listen to the debate at that time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Agenda item 4 is the planning authority section. So under regulation 25 of the local government meeting procedures, regulation 2015, as chairperson, I hereby declare that the council is now acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. For section 4 of the agenda, have a motion, please. Councillor Young. Could you move the motion, Councillor Young?
I move, I'll repeat. I move that the council now act as a planning authority at 2:10 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Luck, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 4.1 is a DA 2023/38 124 Tasman Highway, Bicheno, a change of visitor accommodation. There is a recommendation on page 15. General Manager, I believe we have some further information.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So in relation to that item 4.2, councillors have been circulated a.
May I correct you? 4.1.
Sorry,
That's right.
councillors have been circulated a correspondence from the applicant in support of that application.
Thank you. There is a recommendation on page 15.
Oh.
Councillor Woods, thank you.
Sorry, Mayor, there are other councillors around the table that can put their hand up, just so you know.
Thank you.
Well, councillor.
Oh, thank you. I'll move that pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approval Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, Glamorgan Spring Bay, DA 2023/38 lot 3, 124 Tasman Highway, Bicheno, CT 612315/5, be approved subject to the following conditions 1 through to 1 and advice A to F.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Edwards, thank you. Councillor Woods, should you list to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
No. Speaker for the motion? Speaker against the motion? Councillor Luck?
I'd just like to raise one point there, and that's the property exceeds the 200 square metre threshold. I don't believe any variation of that hard limit should be accepted unless it sets a precedent for other developments in the future. The 200 square metre threshold was set for a reason, and I don't believe it is up to us to vary that limit by discounting parts of a building.
Do you have a question that you wish to address to the planning officers or
It's
just
more of a
just a
statement.
general
Yeah.
statement? Thank you. Councillor Churchill.
I have a question I'd like to address to the planner around that whole point. My understanding was that the upper floor of that building is roughly 80, 90 square metres. Is that correct? Or a bit over 100, was it?
Thank you, Mr. Warner.
Yes, through you, Mayor. Yes, it's around about that. The 200 square metres is the acceptable solution.
Yes.
So
So it's hard to go over we're only, 20 square metres over the acceptable solution. Is that correct?
yes.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Speaker for or against the motion? Nothing further. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Luck is against. The motion is carried 7-1. Thank you. Agenda item 4.2 is change of use of Buckland Church at 1 Sally Peak Road. There is a recommendation. Deputy Mayor Simons.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move that pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, Glamorgan Spring Bay, DA 2023/44 at 1 Sally Peak Road, Buckland, CT 241553/1 for a change of use to function centre, market and museum be approved with the following conditions. 1, use and development must be substantially in accordance with the endorsed plans and the documents unless modified by a condition of this permit. 2, the approved use does not override the existing cemetery use and must not vary from or intensify from this permit and any other planning permit applying to the land unless agreed to in writing by the council's general manager or as allowed by a future planning permit. 3, a parking management plan (brackets PMP) must be submitted to council for approval prior to the first event being held that may exceed 50 vehicles or 100 attendees or where on-street parking may be required. The PMP shall show the no parking areas to be appropriately signposted, required to ensure safe traffic conditions are maintained in Sally Peak Road. The PMP will form part of the approved documents and must be implemented for any event to which the PMP applies. 4, portable toilet facilities are to be provided as required at events. The number of toilet facilities is to take into consideration the number of people expected to attend and the duration of each event. 5, the areas approved for the function centre, market and museum use includes all areas identified on the approved plan except hatched area C. And lastly, advice A to H as shown in this agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Woods, thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
No, I don't have anything.
No, thank you. Councillors, I note that there, condition 3 is changed slightly to a parking management plan as opposed to a traffic management plan. Are there any, and I think Mrs. Kerr has that on there, thank you. Any speakers for the motion or speakers against the motion? Speaker for? Councillor Churchill?
No, I was actually speaking about the motion.
Councillor.
And probably more against the motion, but I think there's a few things to be clarified here. And I was just trying to take my time to see if I could actually get the further information out of the change in the recommendation. I guess my concerns really are around what is defined as the cemetery, and there are graves within the churchyard wall, a number of graves, and I see all of those areas as being sacred to members of the community. I think there is a lot of the community of Buckland value those sites as they should do. And they have their own personal reasons for doing that. A lot of history, a lot of family, a lot of association with that, with those grounds. I would just like to see that the space, and out of the representations that we read too, it was quite notable that there was no one objecting to the use of the building itself for the activities that are spoken about in the reports. I didn't see very much of that at all in those reports. So I guess my situation, from what I've been able to ascertain from reading that, and this may be outside of the planning scheme, I'm not sure where I stand on this, but my understanding is that the graveyard consists of not only Area C, but also of the area within the church walls. And I don't see that that should be managed any differently at all. And I think we should try to keep that area free of activity that the community may find offensive. In other words, I guess eating, drinking, partying on or around, and I'm not suggesting people have done it or do it actively on the graves, but in and around those gravestones. And I'm told through, I can't remember whether it's through the reports, but I think it was through some of the representations, that there are also unmarked graves in that part. So I think that there should be something really clear to clarify that any external activity, as in markets or whatever, are done out in the parking area, but not within the walls of the church. And I'd just like to see that attended to. I don't believe that this motion that we have in front of us is clear enough to define that those areas will be properly protected. Thank you.
Thank you. As I understand it, Councillor Churchill, Area B, yes, does have graves, but it hasn't been an active grave site or cemetery site, if you like, for more than 60 years or somewhere in that time. I could be wrong. Sorry, I understand that section B has not been an active grave site for many, many years, that it's section C, that's the active site. But Mr. Bonner, is there anything that you could add to this for Councillor Churchill? Or I don't want to put you on the spot here, but
through you, Mayor. Look, it is a difficult situation, I understand. Under the planning scheme, the cemetery is not a consideration for the use in the community purpose zone. I would say that under the scheme, the only reason why it's discretionary is because of the car parking issue. Otherwise, it's a permitted development. The area within Area B, as marked on the plan, is a graveyard. My understanding is it's not an active cemetery and that it's no longer there's no burials occurring there. It is an open cemetery, graveyard. And the active cemetery is Area C, which is the hatched area.
What do we mean, Mr. Bonner, by active
In that there's still burials occurring within C, Area C. That's my understanding.
Councillor McQueenie?
Yeah, look, I've been to events at this church, not the one that's mentioned in lots of representations, and they were handled very respectfully. And so I guess concur with Councillor Churchill in terms of it would be really good to see the opportunity for this site and the Buckland community to enjoy events there. I'm no lawyer, but I had a look at the Burials and Cemeteries Act, and it isn't just a matter, it seems, of whether people haven't been buried there, and it mentions both 50 years and 100 years at 2 points, but that there's a process for closing a cemetery. And I'm not sure if this is closed, in which case the legislation relating to burials and cemeteries applies. So, and the report's absent on that. So I agree. I don't think we're in a position to actually know, unless someone can tell me here whether it's been closed, that whether we think it's active or not, the Cemeteries Act may still apply, and whether that needs to be taken into consideration, because then it's a different situation.
Mr. Bonner?
Through you, Mayor. My understanding is that it's not a closed ceremony, cemetery. The last burial undertook was around 40 years ago. You got to be that 50 years, and then there's a process that they need to go through. Council has no jurisdiction under the Cemeteries Act. That is a matter for the cemeteries manager to how they have legislative requirements they need to meet. It's not something that I could take into consideration as to how they manage that as part of the application.
But I'm not sure how we can make a decision without knowing the status of those things.
I didn't hear that, Mayor.
I'm not sure how we can make a decision about what we think the uses or conditions should be on a land without understanding the status of whether this is closed, whether that's an option for addressing these concerns that relate to the use of the Area B.
So as I understand it, the cemetery is not closed. It's about a 90-year process, I think, or at least 75-year process before you can actually, it's a period of time after the last
50 years after the last interment.
After the last interment.
Yeah.
In terms of it being used and the cemetery manager, the new owners of any church that has a cemetery attached to it have certain obligations they have to abide by. And as Mr. Bonner has said, it's not something that we can actually apply as a council because it's a separate legislation. As I understand it, that I have that right, Mr. Bonner, don't I?
That's correct, Mayor.
Thank you.
I would like advice on what those obligations are under that Act to know how they interplay with what we might be deciding around conditions as well.
Okay. So any other speakers? Councillor Young?
My understanding is, and I went, I think, to the last burial there, and I was older than 40, only just. So it probably was about 40 years ago. That an act of parliament that deals with cemeteries, if it's still designated as a cemetery, will override anything that we do.
Any other speakers? Councillor Luck?
Look, I'd just like to read a statement for my input based on the submissions, the response we had, because the development application does concern me. Whilst I fully appreciate the developer's desire to make the site self-funding, it is an active cemetery with many generations of Spring Bay Council ratepayers buried there. The church might have abandoned them, but I don't feel that means that the council should. As an 8th generation Tasmanian, I've probably got a cousin or two buried there. My issue is the walled area. It contains many of the oldest and the most important graves, both marked and unmarked. The change of use proposed allows many actions in that area that might not be deemed desirable and could be seen as sacrilegious to the relatives of those earlier settlers. Many of the respondents agree with my sentiments, and I feel an agreement regarding the designation of the walled area as an active cemetery with sensitive usage could resolve this dispute. As a councillor, I would be more than happy to help mediate a common sense solution if required and if possible. Whilst the management of the cemetery comes under the Burial and Cremations Act, I feel we might be, as a planning authority, failing our community if we do not recognise the wall area as an active cemetery and, like the active cemetery outside the wall, restrict the usage to memorial, reflection and similar sensitive purposes. I propose the council consider initiating and preparing a local provision schedule for this site.
Sorry, councillor, you're introducing further information into a planning matter that I can't accept at this stage.
Okay, thank you.
The issue around this is that the new owners of any church under the redress scheme, and it doesn't matter whether it's a community group or an individual or whatever that owns a church under the redress scheme, and whether that's an Anglican church or a Uniting church or whatever. The new owners, if there is an active cemetery attached to it, have obligations to respect that cemetery. And as you've heard from Mr. Bonner, we as a planning authority do not have the power to make changes to those obligations under the planning scheme. So that's really where I sit with it. I can see that, as I said, it's not even about St. John the Baptist Church. It's about churches that have been established under this redress scheme, in my view, at least. So, yeah, sorry. Councillor Edwards?
I'd just like to agree with what you're saying, Mayor, that the even if we are completely controlled by the Burials Act, so as a planning authority, we have to take that into account. The Friends of Buckland Church have obligations under that act to maintain and treat the graves in the way that is legislated, which they do. As for moving out of the beyond the stone wall, well, the first issue is the power is in the church. So if they want to hold any sort of thing at all, they have to be close to the church, basically at the door of the church, to have the power. As they found out their last function, they ran a lead and it wouldn't work because there's not enough. So straight away, their ability to raise funds and hold any sort of activity will be severely curtailed if they're moved out of that area, which, although it may still be officially an open cemetery, it is basically a closed cemetery because people haven't been buried in there since the 70s and will not be in the future. So, and as far as people being distressed and upset about people having merriment around a grave, that is all a very personal and private issue. As far as I'm concerned, I couldn't care less if somebody dances on my grave. I know others may have varying opinions. And as you may not know, I was an altar boy for about 4 years, and I was, yeah. And in the Bible, Luke 12, chapters 19, 20, it states, "And I shall say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid upon for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry."
Thank
Is
you,
what the
councillor.
good Lord said.
Thank you, councillor. You've probably introduced information.
sorry,
into a
I
planning
probably
authority-
did.
into
I
a
probably
planning-
did.
That's
It was an interesting
not
point.
necessary at this
From-
point, but I appreciate it.
I was a dainty altar boy.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Sorry.
Sorry, it's just
Councillor
one matter.
McQueenie, just give me 2 seconds,
Yep.
Councillor McQueenie, because you have actually
Yep.
asked one question. I need to ensure that no other. Councillor Woods?
Thank you, Mayor. I thought I may have moved this one, but I didn't. It was councillor Simons, and I was thinking I might close debate, but I don't have to.
That's right.
I wanted to say that I acknowledge and respect the thoughts of the representations that we received. There were numerous and many, but they also had the same concerns with regards to the Area B. However, it wasn't the council's decision for the church to be sold and or that's the word, I've got it written in front of me. It was the church's decision, and a community group, who I applaud, took it upon themselves to raise the funds to purchase a church to keep it in the community. And it is a stunning church, and to see it go to rack and ruin would be more, I think, more distressing and also more disrespectful to those people within the walled area of the church. And I think that the calibre of the possible events that are going to be there are not ones where people are going to be dancing on graves. I think people that attend the type of functions that are going to be there are going to be more than mindful of where they are and what they do. And if they aren't, well, that's a shame. But that being said, look, I'm in support of it. It's a stunning venue that should be shown off in various ways, and hopefully I'll get to do a wedding or two there. I've done a cemetery. I mean, I've done a what do you call that thing? Funeral. That'll do. But it's a beautiful place, and it shouldn't be wasted and closed up. Thank you.
Councillor McQueenie, I will allow another question from you.
Yeah, and it's not on the same topic, but around the application. And I ask this because in a future paper, it states something that seems to be at odds here. So a future paper in the agenda. And I don't wish to muddy the waters, but I do want clarity. In Swansea Memorial Hall.
No, sorry,
Yeah, I know.
Councillor McQueenie, you can't introduce further information into a
Okay.
planning matter
Where
that is not relevant to the particular matter.
do the toilet facilities for the proposed use of museums, events and whatever have to include access for people with disability?
That will have to be considered by the organisers, as I understand it. Right.
Is that,
Councillor, sorry, yes, Mr. Bonner,
Through you, Mayor.
put some clarity into that for us, please.
Look, there's a matter for a building. It's a building issue. It's not something that can be considered under the planning scheme.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, I think everybody's had made comment. Do you wish to close debate at all on this as a?
Yeah, I'll close the
motion?
debate. It's a difficult situation. We appeasing some people and not appeasing some other people. So I think for me, the weight of good that comes from, as Councillor Wood said, the church being used is outweighs perhaps the people who are worried about the graves within that area. And I just hope the Friends of the Buckland Church treat it with the respect, and I'm sure they will. And so I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. On that note, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Edwards, Councillor Luck, Councillor Young, Councillor Woods, Deputy Mayor Simons, Mayor Arnold. Those against? Councillors Churchill and McQueenie are against. The motion is carried 6-2. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on. Agenda item 4.3 is a draft amendment AM 2022-01 for Morgan Spring Bay Local Provision Schedule. Subdivision of additional lots under the Dolphin Sands particular purpose zone. There is a recommendation on page 33. Councillor Churchill.
Move that pursuant to section 40K under division 3 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, the Planning Authority 1 include representations 5 to 23 inclusive in its assessment of the representations to AM 2022/02 under section 40K 2B of the Act. 2, endorse attachment 2, 40K report, draft amendment AM 2022-02 V1.1 as its report on AM 2022-02 in accordance with section 40K2 of the Act. And 3, recommend to the Tasmanian Planning Commission that amendment 2022-02 be modified to revise A1A and B as follows. A, be for the consolidation of lots with no additional lots created, or B, be for public open space or utilities.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? A seconder, Deputy Mayor Simons, thank you. Councillor Churchill, do you wish to speak to the motion or
Yes,
close debate with you, your choice, councillor?
might wish to debate.
I hope that's
Look,
fine.
I think I've spoken on this one a number of times. I don't think there's anything new to be said here, except that we now have a lot of representations being presented on this. the majority of those representations, the vast majority, have made one point very clear, that despite what comes out of this, they hold with no further subdivision on Dolphin Sands. That's all they really want, is the security around knowing that that area is not going to be changed into something that it seriously and physically cannot maintain in terms of its environment and services, everything else that's been talked about on numerous occasions. But I just wanted to make that point yet again, that the residents do not want further subdivision of that land.
Deputy
you.
Mayor, do you, as a seconder, do you wish to speak on the matter?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I concur with councillor Churchill's thoughts there. Just a question through you, perhaps to the planner. I did, in just reading the officer's comments, and this has come up throughout a few members within the community, is when we put the we wrote to all the landowners in the area, and we sort of initially didn't, it sounded like we didn't get the response we wanted when we advertised the amendment. And then yet and we've said as much, because it said this was not consistent with the planning authority's understanding of community views. And then we went back in a sense to see what another set of responses would be. Can you explain that process? I didn't quite understand how that came about,
Thank you, Mr.
and
Bond.
if that's an okay way of doing it.
To you, Mayor. The Dolphin Sands area, as we all know, is a very distinct area that comes under its own particular purpose zone. When the normal notification process under the new provisions of the Act, or under the current provisions of the Act, is that we put an ad in the paper and we put it up on our website. The responses we got were very low to what we were thinking that we would get. Because it is a substantial change from no subdivision to allowing subdivision. As a consequence, staff believed that we needed to provide, make sure that the community was aware of the change that was being proposed, the amendment. And therefore we wrote to everyone within that, because it is a distinct area, we felt that it was worth doing. And I think that's reflected by the response that we got. I don't believe that we were trying to have any influence other than get a good understanding of what the community's feelings were on this, or the property owners' feelings were on this proposed amendment.
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Bonner, could I'd like to ask, my perception of the planning authority's view of this particular matter probably comes from the subdivisions that were done initially, that we had to, we had no other choice but to refuse those subdivisions. And I think from memory, we did receive some representations at that time. So that's probably where the planning authority's view of the community's view actually originally emanated from. Would that be an accurate thought?
Yes, that's part of it, but I think also the part of it is that it is a substantial change to the planning scheme, and we want to make sure that the community is aware of that, which potentially via a newspaper and a website, you may not get that appreciation. And also we do have a lot of owners who don't live in the area.
Absentee owners, yes, of course. Thank you. Any speakers for or speaker against the motion? Any comment? Any questions? That being the case, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Thank you for your input. It's very much appreciated. Under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedure Regulations 2015, as chairperson, I hereby declare that the council is no longer acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for section 4 of the agenda. Do I have a motion, please? Councillor Woods, thank you.
Thank you. I'll move that council no longer acts as a planning authority at 2:41 p.m.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Seconder, please? Councillor Young, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 5 is the financial reports. We welcome Ms. Elise Blaine to the chamber, the Director of Corporate and Community. Agenda item 5.1 is the financial reports for the period ending March 2023. There is a recommendation on page 36. Councillor Churchill, thank you.
Move that council receives and notes the financial reports as attached to this report for the period ended 31st of March 2023.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor McQueenie, thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the financial reports? Councillor Young?
Madam Mayor, I do note from the reports that were asked to note that there are significant variations in receipts that are received to date compared to the receipts received for the year last. And it just raises a concern to me that it may be, and you can't tell exactly by looking at the summarised reports, that some people are having a bit of difficulty in meeting their payments. And we all know that some of the expenditure items have leaped into the air because people are, and they tender for works, loading up the tender and with no competition, we're held to ransom. There's very little that our officers, no matter how diligent they are, can do about it. We only wish that there are more people out there tendering to do the works so that reasonable prices were received and ratepayers' monies would be properly expended without the council being held to ransom. Otherwise, I have nothing further to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Young. General Manager, do you wish to comment on this?
Only if thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in listening to Councillor Young's question, I think he's talking about the operating grants and the variance year to date. A lot of that has got to do with, and the Director of Corporate, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think a lot of that's got to do with the timing of the financial grants. They come in installments at different times. And a major portion of that figure that you're probably looking at on page 111 in the attachments is made up of the roads grant that we get.
Yeah.
About 1.3 million of that is just roads alone. So it can have and the timing of that can have a substantial impact on what you're seeing on the bottom line. I don't believe, I didn't quite understand your comment about people struggling to pay or whatever you're trying to say there. Sorry.
One of the things that raise a concern with me is that interest rates and other financial issues might be reflected in the question of cash flows because people aren't paying the bills as fast as they used to because they're in the squeeze, to put it simply.
I think we have a very good team in that particular
I'm not
space.
criticising the team.
No. I understand you're not Councillor Young, but I know we have a very good team in that particular space, so I'm quite sure that they'll be keeping an eye on it. Councillor Churchill, then the Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Yes, I just have a question of our finance officer, if I may, just around that point, and just to allay any confusion. Would Ms. Blaine be able to tell us how the flow of rate income is coming in? It would appear to me to be about on line with other years. Am I correct in that?
Thank you, Ms.
Through
Blaine. Thank
you,
you.
Madam Mayor. There is no difference to any other year. Everything is on target. There's a very low amount of debtor balances as would be expected, and they are managed separately. There doesn't appear to be any difference of payments, of instalments, of rates to any other year. So that's not a concern for us at this time.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. Thank you.
Before you do, Mr. Woodward or Ms. Blank, could I just clarify that that microphone is actually working? It doesn't appear to be. It is.
Yeah.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to ask our finance officer a question just about a line item really, and it's probably just my lack of knowledge here. It's on page 111 in our cash flow statements. There's a big discrepancy down under investing activities, payment for property, plant, and equipment. We've gone from a bit over $1 million year to date, and then last year we had nearly 6 million. Could you just explain that line for me and what it is?
Ms.
Through
Blank,
you,
thank you.
Madam
Sorry.
Mayor, there are different timings involved in this report. The column on the right is as at June column, so we're not talking about the same time period.
I understand that.
And the difference in spend is to do with capital spend. So that's capital money and showing how much capital has been spent for the year to date versus capital spent for the previous full financial year. So it is indicating that there's been not as much capital spending this year.
And would we expect that figure, which I guess we're not going to expect that figure to come up a lot in the next 3 months to get anywhere near what it was last year, are we?
We are hopeful that we will have suppliers made available to do the jobs that were budgeted for them this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blaine. Any other comments, questions for Ms. Blaine or the General Manager? Nothing further. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 6 is the section 24 committees, Tribunal Recreational Ground Advisory Committee minutes are in the agenda. There is a recommendation at page 38. Councillor Edwards.
That the minutes of the Tribunal Recreation Ground Advisory Committee meeting held on 13th September 2022 be received and noted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Woods, thank you. Any questions, any comments? Councillor McQueenie?
This is about Swansea, isn't it? Sorry, I've just confused my papers. Is that right?
Tribunal.
My apologies. I'll come next then.
Page 37.
Thank you. No, mistaken.
Are there any further questions or comments? That being the case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 7 is the Director Works and Infrastructure, Mr. Porch's information report. There is a recommendation on page 43. Councillor Woods, thank you.
Thank you.
No, I'll move that council notes the information.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Young, thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Porch, councillors?
Only have one.
Councillor
which-
Edwards?
Yeah, I only have one which may help Sue. The road at Spring Beach, the landslip, that's looking to be hopefully fixed come June the 30th, isn't it? After June the 30th, new financial year.
Madam Mayor, yes, at present there is no funding for it. We are looking forward to receiving funding under the Local Roads Community and Infrastructure Fund Phase 4 of $401,000, which will be proposing that council put towards that project as a part of the budget considerations coming up.
Thank you.
Can I just add, is there's still, even pre this last lot of rain, there's still an awful lot of water running down the side of the road. I know that the drilling said that there was no issue, but
Sorry.
your eyesight seems to, maybe my eyes tell lies, but you'd think there's still an awful lot of water running down the drain on the top side of the road. It seems quite strange. I just hope the road's still there come July, as do you.
Are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Porch, please? No? Yeah,
Maybe.
Deputy Mayor, thank
Through
you.
you, Madam Mayor, just just noting under the waste management there that we've got FPOS machines at all our waste stations now, which is fantastic. I was just wondering if there's any sort of update on our waste tender. I know we're looking at, we were having trouble getting a price that we were happy with. Is that progressed further? Or are we expecting a report anytime?
We're just holding off until the expression of interest process has been brought through. That process may have introduced an alternative. It doesn't look like it has. So with that, as we put that to bed, we're in a position to then go back to the market for the curbside and bin collection as a separate options.
Thank you, Mr. Porch. Councillor Young.
If I may, have you ask Mr. Porch a question? How much is the increase in waste management compared this year to last budget?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I put some information was put in a report a number of months ago, and that indicated in the order of $660,000.
660,000 increase, is that in the order of 660,000?
Over what period of time?
As of the 1st of July, that will be the increase in cost for waste for next financial year over the cost of this financial year.
So it's 660,000 increase for the next 12 months.
That's correct.
What is the current cost pre the increase?
I'd have to take that on notice. I don't have that information to hand.
Yeah, nice. to know.
And quite obviously, councillors, it's also things that we will have to consider during our budget discussions. There's nothing further. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion's carried unanimously. Agenda item 8 is officers' reports requiring a decision. 8.1 is the Swansea Courthouse Management Committee report. I note that this report from this committee is actually in this section because they are not a Section 24 Committee of Council. So there is a recommendation on page 45. Councillor Young, thank you.
I move the council receives and notes the Swansea Courthouse Management Committee's 2022 annual report.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Churchill, thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor McQueenie?
Yeah, we could just clarify why the report suggests that there is a requirement to have disabled access facilities to be able to generate future income through events at that site.
Not something I can answer. I'm sorry, Councillor McQueenie. I don't know. Is it a question you'd like to take on notice, General Manager?
Are you, sorry, Councillor McQueenie, through you, Madam Mayor, are you asking why they are stating that in their report?
Yes, and if that's a fact that where events occur, there have to be, which it suggests, disabled toilets.
I will take that up with
Yeah,
the
thank you.
committee. I'll take it
Yep.
on notice. Thank you.
And the General Manager will let you know out of session.
Yep.
Councillor, thank you.
Thank you.
There are no other questions or comments. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 8.2 is the Southern Council's Climate Collaboration. There is a recommendation on page 47. Councillor Simons, thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I'll move that council notes the report and request the general manager consider the recommendations within the report for implementation as practical.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Young, thank you. Any questions or comments in relation to it? Was quite, from my perspective, it was quite enlightening for the amount of kilowatts that we use at various sites. Councillor Churchill.
Just some comments. Just one thing I'd like clarified on page 130 of the attachments or page 8 of the document. The pie chart there doesn't ring true with the numbers above, unless I've got it wrong. It would appear that the it said there that fleet fuel is 1%. I think fleet fuel is supposed to be the 20%. I think I'm being pedantic here, but I just think that pie chart's all wrong. I'm happy to accept that I'm wrong if I
Mr. Porch or Mr. Woodward, which, Mr. Porch, you?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't have a good answer for that. It's one of those things you sometimes you can digest so much of the report and get information on it. And I dealt with some aspects of it, but didn't get down to that level of detail. I'm sorry.
I was just trying to prove that I'd read the report. That's all it was.
Well done. Well done.
And I think I was too with my comment about kilowatts used, councillor Churchill, so.
Just wanted to make the point that it's great to see this sort of report coming to us. So we're starting to get a bit of a handle on the energy use that we have and our environmental impact as a council,
Sure.
and to introduce the concept that there are things that we can perhaps do about that. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, General Manager.
Just through you, Madam Mayor, I think I just want to make a general comment about climate change and the onuses and obligations on local government. And I think it's fair to say that Glamorgan Spring Bay Council does not have a team of dedicated or even a single body person dedicated to climate change generally and all the things that come with that. I'd like to thank the director, Peter Porch, for his involvement in this to date. But unlike some other councils that may be well-resourced in this space, we are not. But it's very important that we, like as with everyone else, are able and responsive to the climate change demands that are going to come. I don't know the answers, but we are not resourced in this space to be, I guess, leading practice in local government.
Thank you.
Through you, Matt.
Very good, yes.
I'm a long way from a climate change devotee, but I certainly support the council trying to save energy because it will save money.
Any other comments?
Well, other than I'll close the debate on the fact that it's a very in-depth report and it's good to see it's been done. Probably the interesting thing for me is the biggest part of our emissions are potentially our landfill waste. And if we did something with that, we'd be going a long way to making a difference.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 8.3 is the leasing and licensing of council-owned and managed property policy. There is a recommendation on page 49. I have a motion, please. Councillor Woods, thank you.
Thank you. I'll move that council adopts the leasing and licensing of council-owned and managed property policy in the form of attachment 1.
Thank you, councillor Churchill. Councillor Woods, do you wish to speak to this?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Churchill?
No, well, apart from saying that this is the first time that we've had a policy around this area, and I think we needed to have some sort of policy, so we've got some guidelines to work on when we're faced with these situations where we're trying to manage council land, and within a policy, we've got some guidelines and framework to use. Thank you.
Councillor Young.
I'd like to say that it obviously does not operate retrospectively or change any existing contracts that we have, because some emails to council have raised concerns about that. Prior existing uses and prior contracts are not changed by the adoption of this policy.
And I think it's probably important to note, councillor Young, that my perception of this policy, at least, is that it will enhance the relationship that council has between the occupiers and users of those properties and council, and gives a much better stakeholder engagement in terms of it. So, is there any other comments or questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 8.4 is request for event support for the Bicheno beams. It is the recommendation is on page 52. Thanks, councillor Woods.
I'll move that council approves the application for Bicheno Community Development Association for 2,500 towards Bicheno Beams.
23.
Yeah, 2023. Yes.
Do I have a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Woods, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just to say, Mayor, if I may, that last year was a very, very popular event within the Bicheno community. Brought a lot to the community as well. And it was very, very well received. So I wish them all the best.
Deputy Mayor? do you wish to-
Yeah, I just concur with councillor Woods' thoughts there. It's a fantastic event in Bicheno and it is a real economic driver, which is actually now it's getting bedded down a little bit. The businesses and the people around the event are really stepping up to the plate, and that's making it they're taking advantage of the people this is bringing in. So it's great to see.
Thank you. Councillor Churchill.
Fully supports $2,500 for this event, and it is developing into almost a signatory event for GSBC in a sense. It's so important and it's so good. I just have one issue around where that money's coming from. That's all. So we're going to clean out the event fund, and we'll be taking some from the normal grants. So I'm assuming that this works with our policies and that we're not stretching anything here that we shouldn't be.
General Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, and thank you for your question, councillor. So we are going to be talking through the budget process about bringing a bit of balance and a change in the value that council allocates both for the small community fund and the events. We believe history has shown us that it's a little bit out of kilter, and because council supports events in a greater financial way than the small community grants that are limited to $1,000, that budget has gotten eaten up fairly quickly during the financial year. We are at the end. We are heading into a quieter period when it comes to community events, small events, and events generally and functions. So quite comfortable with that budget reshuffle. There's certainly enough funds in the community small grant to support the balance of this. And we certainly, we don't want to get to the end of the financial year and still have a lot of money sitting in the community small grants. So I'm and there's no problem from the allocation from one budget to another.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 9 is notices of motion. There is a notice of motion from the Deputy Mayor, although I note that it is amended, and the amended motion is on at your table. Deputy Mayor, would you like to put your motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move that one, Glamorgan Springbank Council write to the Health Minister to raise council and community concerns over the department's choice of 68 Burgess Street as a preferred site for Bicheno's new ambulance station. And 2, that council requests a meeting with the Health Minister's representatives for the purpose of discussing those concerns and to give council an opportunity to put forward potential alternative sites.
Is there a seconder? Councillor McQueenie, thank you. Deputy Mayor, speak to your motion.
Yeah, I will choose to speak to the motion now. I think most of it's established in the little background report that comes, and I think the first thing is that the important thing is that no one doesn't support a new ambulance station in Bicheno. We all want a new ambulance station in Bicheno. The concern is that potentially it's not in the right spot. I know the area very well. I know that it's very congested with traffic. It's very congested with pedestrians, which immediately to me makes it unsuitable to have an ambulance station there. Secondly, the area is a fairly important commercial part of Bicheno. It's one of the last pieces within our town centre. that is available to have retail accommodation or be used in a commercial purpose. And I'm just don't believe a piece of state government infrastructure sits well in that space. That again is another reason why I think we need to find an alternate site. And that is borne out by the fact that the current owner of that site has a DA before us at council proposing just those particular uses for that land. I think as a council, we haven't got a lot of influence in this space. We're not paying for the station. We actually don't have a lot to say. But I think there comes a time when council needs to step up and take that leadership role that we need to advocate very strongly to find another position for this station. So we get it in Bicheno. There may be some compromises need to be made. And I think as the council, we need to be the mediator of that and really try and help get a resolution to this situation.
Thank you. Councillor McQueenie as the seconder, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I absolutely support that this is a really critical piece of land for the future development and in all sorts of ways potentially for Bicheno. I'm pleased to see the amended motion because I'd like to comment on emergency management experience around the depot site. So I appreciate that there are reasons why council might wish for the depot site to be used, but I think it's a really easy thing to say no to if you head up Tas Ambulance or in fact other minister because of the access arrangements to that site. So there are things that they have indicated in their consultation report that they look for, which is flat land, nothing built on it already, but then there are the safety issues around access. The council depot site, if you have to go down a road off the main road, well, then that's used with someone else. Then you go down it further. Again, there are other buildings with access off that until you reach the ambulance station. So there's all sorts of points at which failure to get an ambulance out of there could happen. And what that amounts to for anyone in emergency planning is a front page of the Mercury and somebody potentially dying because you can't get an ambulance out quickly.
Councillor McQueenie, can I just interrupt you there?
Yeah.
I'm a little bit concerned that you, not because of this, but because of the whole council. I'm not sure that the whole council has actually seen the consultation report that you refer to.
That's a public one that was available that came out of the Bicheno process. Yeah, it was published, I don't know, last year. Yeah, so it's their consultation report.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I'm not, well,
Yeah.
I'm confident I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so
I need you to,
So I was just wrapping up, which is to say, I think the idea that we talk about a suitable site when there are apparently ones slightly up the road that would provide for that land to be available for the intended uses, but also really meet the need for a Bicheno site is more likely to get a good listen to by us in putting something forward as an alternate solution.
thank you. Councillor Young.
A question to the proposer, our deputy mayor.
Mm.
Is it not correct that the Minister for Health is the Premier?
That's correct.
Are we not meeting him tomorrow?
Yes, I don't actually, through you, Madam Mayor, I don't think that's the appropriate forum to discuss this matter with him.
And is it not correct that the ambulance officers want to have a site as close to the bakery takeaway shop as they can get? Is that not correct?
I think
That's probably not correct.
I think that's introducing extra
Councillor Young.
information, Councillor Young.
Well, it's a question that our deputy mayor knows the answer to.
No, that wouldn't be true at all. That'd be probably prefer to be close to Middle Bay, maybe. I'm not sure.
Are there any other questions or comments in relation to the Deputy Mayor's motion? Deputy Mayor, do you wish to close debate?
Yeah, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. There are no petitions at agenda item 10. There are no questions on notice by councillors. Councillors will note that there is a new section in this particular section of 11.2, which does allow councillors to make any comments or statements around issues that may be in the community or simply to congratulate an organisation on something. Councillor Woods, you take advantage of being the first person to utilise this section.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yes, look, it's a comment statement / comment statement. I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank the people of Buckland that came out to meet with the 3 councillors last week at an informal Community Connect gathering. 9 people is quite a good turnout. When we first had a Community Connect session in Buckland some years ago, we had 1. So hence why Buckland was sort of not included, hasn't been included within the Community Connect sessions. But now I think the community themselves have proven that they're worthy of having a session held there every now and again, not every session, but you know, they do turn up, they are interested. So yeah, congratulations to them all. It was a very informal meeting at the pub, I might add. Nice place, but you know, it was a good fun, good day, good discussion, and yeah, I thank them for making the time.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Just for the information of all councillors, when we were when all of us were in the election process, I think it became very obvious that every single person that was standing for council wanted to see a different process in terms of communication with the community, and the fact that we can meet with our ratepayers one-on-one in small roundtable groups. And I would just encourage councillors in any area to talk to their community groups. I thank you very much, Councillor Woods, for that. Are there no other questions or comments in this section? No, thank you. I will then move to agenda item 12, which is the closed item section. There is a recommendation on page 56 to move into closed session. Councillor Edwards?
I may have to go. If that's okay.
2 seconds.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Woods?
Yes, so I'll move that council moves into closed session at 3:13 p.m.
Thank you. Seconded, Deputy Mayor. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Mrs. Kerr.